Have you ever experienced misplaced anger? Maybe you have got really upset with someone about something that really wasn't their fault. I get a bit like this sometimes when I'm on the phone trying to resolve a problem with my broadband or telephone or energy bill. I know that the customer service assistant on the end of the line is not the one responsible for my problem. They didn't come round and cut the connection to my internet. I know it's not their fault that I have been overcharged. And yet nonetheless I find myself getting annoyed with them. I have to rein in that anger. I've been on the receiving end of this kind of anger too, working on the customer service desk in a branch of Marks and Spencer's. I often got the blame for children's uniform falling apart, sofas not being delivered on time, or us being out of stock of bras in the right size. None of those things were my fault, but it didn't stop people getting really angry with me, blaming me, shouting at me, being really quite horrible at times. What's been happening to Paul in our readings over the last few days is a little similar to this, though on a much bigger scale. Some of the Jewish people in Jerusalem, God's chosen people, are directing a lot of misplaced anger at Paul. They're angry because they think that he is drawing people away from God. They think he is a heretic, that his teaching is dangerous. They think that everything that Paul is doing is against the will of God, and it's making them angry. And you can understand it if those things were true. If this man was a heretic drawing people away from God, you could understand why there's anger. Maybe they'd be right to be angry. The problem is they're so caught up in what they think God wants and in their anger that they have completely missed the new thing that God is doing. They have become so engrossed in their own idea of what they believe God is like, what God wants from them, how God acts, that they've lost a real relationship with the living God, and they are now ready to persecute, to beat, to kill a man who has that relationship. The very thing they think they're protecting, their anger, is misplaced. They think they are protecting God and God's laws, when in fact they are destroying one who comes to share them. As Christians, as the church, when we read the stories of Jesus and Acts, we, I think, normally imagine ourselves in the shoes of the disciples and the early church. That's the place in the story we put ourselves. I wonder if sometimes we might need to ask ourselves whether the shoes of the Pharisees and those opposing the church fit us better. We need to be able to ask ourselves this hard question about what roles we're playing in God's story today. How, as a church, do we respond to people, both inside our churches and outside of them, who challenge the way we do things, who question aspects of our beliefs and practices? What is the right way to respond to new ideas, criticisms, and challenges? If someone like Paul comes in and seems to question everything we do, is our immediate response defensive and angry and even violent? How can we make sure that as God's people we don't fall into that same trap that the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem did, fighting against, persecuting and seeking to stamp out the work of God because it's not quite the same as we think it should be? How can we make sure that we can properly discern new things, different things, new ways of thinking and doing things that are from God and those that are not? How can we make sure that we do not misplace our anger?